chosen by God, starved by family, the spiritual cost of being a chosen one by God. So let's talk about this. Our family members who are narcissistic, covert, malignant types that were envious and jealous over what God has done for us in our lives. And really, the pursuit is endless. But we are chosen by God and yet starved by family members. And that's not just the title, it's the truth they tried to bury our whole lives. So this episode is for the ones who were spiritually marked by the Lord, but emotionally malnourished by family, not necessarily always beaten, not always screamed at, but just systematically deprived of food, of shelter, of support and dignity in the most cruel ways. This is narcissistic abuse in its quietest form. This is gangstalking disguised as parenting. This is spiritual warfare waged through empty plates, unpaid bills, and withheld love and support and affection as they go about to sacrifice the things that were meant for us. They saw your light and they tried to dim it by controlling your access to your basic need and right for existence and survival. They called it tough love. You knew it was intentional neglect the whole time, but nobody else could see it. You knew that it was intentional. They called you dramatic. You were living through resource deprivation your whole life. But God didn't choose you to punish you. He chose you for His purpose. And that purpose starts with us speaking the truth. Today, we break the silence, we name the tactics, and we really reclaim the narrative that's been buried under layers of messes that the narcissist has transferred on us as if they were our own mess. Because healing through truth starts with calling neglect what it is. It is total abuse. So let's look at this a little further in discussing the narcissistic starvation and neglect that has been done to us. The starvation as a strategy of abuse to bring us under their control. So this is how really narcissistic families use a lack of food, money, and shelter, even though those things are available, and withhold support as they try to control us. So there's much emotional neglect as a gang-stalking tactic, neglect to our basic and common resources that make for an autonomous, independent life. It's this illusion that they say that they did their best versus the reality of the calculated, intentional deprivation. We are truly chosen but targeted by family members. And really, I think of the biblical parallels, Joseph, David, the Lord Jesus Christ Himself. All were chosen and yet betrayed by their own family. So why do we need to discuss this? Because really, being spiritually gifted makes you a threat to these dysfunctional systems of control and abuse and power. The cost of being awake is really a heavy price to pay, but it's worth it. And it's built on their denial. That's why it's such a heavy price. The narcissist always will have a ledger when doing their own duty as a parent. This is really how abusers keep score of what they give, even though they're the ones that created the collapse and the control game they've been playing with our lives and transferring that mess onto us as if we did it to ourselves. They weaponize withholding. The resource deprivation is really a smear tactic. You know, you've heard it before. You're ungrateful. You never appreciated what we did for you. But this is the emotional invoice survivors are forced to pay. It's really about breaking these generational curses and this artificial scarcity that has been passed along to us in total deprivation. So it's about survivor empowerment through naming, exposing, and healing, and that's why I'm here. It's about emotional autonomy as divine rebellion against all the control that has rerouted the course of our lives. So really, it's about reclaiming your voice. And that is what disrupts their entire system. And that is why they've done all they can to keep us from speaking out. So there are so many things that my narcissistic family member, my mother, didn't do. And this is really to discuss the narcissistic neglect that is intentional and deliberate and not an accident. You want to know what neglect looks like when it wears pearls and when it smiles really big to the neighbors. It's not just abstinence. It's strategic silence. It's emotional starvation dressed up as discipline. Let me show you the many ways in which she didn't show up for me and exactly why. You know, she didn't ever ask how I felt, only how I made her look, because my emotions were inconvenient. They threatened her fake con artist self-esteem and threatened her fake image. So she taught me to smile while I was drowning, to perform while I was bleeding out. Her neglect wasn't forgetfulness. It was branding. It was to smear my name. She didn't comfort me when I cried ever. She just rolled her eyes, shook her head, and huffed and puffed that she had to commit. Because tears weren't signals of pain to these people, guys. They were accusations. And in her courtroom, vulnerability was contempt of court. She needed me stoic so she could stay spotless. So she never celebrated my wins, ever. She just competed with me to win only because my success stole the attention. It stole the spotlight. So she minimized, she mocked, she ignored and deprived through artificial scarcity, pretending to be poor, pretending not to have the skills and the ability to take care of her own. Her neglect was a power play, and it's like saying, don't outshine me. So she never protected me from harm, but she blamed it on me rather, whether it was a sexual abuse done to me as a child. It doesn't matter what it is, because if I was hurt, it meant that I was weak, and weakness was treason to her. So she needed a scapegoat instead, and not a son, not a child. She didn't teach me boundaries ever. She punished me severely for having them, because boundaries meant I was separate. It meant I was autonomous. It meant I was an individual. And separate meant that I was not controllable. Her neglect was control disguised as motherhood, disguised as parenting, disguised as friendship, disguised as closeness. She didn't ever notice when I was sick ever, unless it got her empathy. It got her remorse and sympathy, because my pain was only useful if it served her narrative. Otherwise, I was just dramatic. I was just lazy and attention-seeking, the very thing that she was. Her neglect was selective empathy. And it's like saying, perform or perish. She never remembered my milestones. She remembered my mistakes only, because shame was easier to weaponize than pride. She archived every flaw, every mistake, every failure, and every misstep. Her neglect was just a ledger of guilt, and that list comes out every time you try to hold them accountable. She didn't ask what I needed ever. She told me what I lacked only, because needs implied entitlement, and entitlement threatened her fake authority. Never wanting to do the work, guys. Never wanting to put in the time to look at her shadow. Her neglect was deprivation with a moral twist, on a fake moral high ground, as these abusers feel they have a double standard to do whatever they want to you. She didn't show up to my events, the things that were important to me. Yet a whole lifetime went by. She made me feel guilty for wanting her there, because presence required effort, and effort wasn't worth it unless she earned the applause and the attention and the praise and got the credit only. Her neglect was absence with a side of shame. So she never said, I love you on her own. She said, you owe me, rather. So because love to her was only a transactional thing, guys. And I was always in debt, of course, to her. Her neglect was a contract that I never signed, that I never agreed to be a part of. And yet it followed me my whole life, not letting me separate, not letting me become an individual. This isn't just neglect. It's a narrative erasure. It's a story and a life being extinguished. It's the slow deletion of a child's right to feel, to need, to exist without apology, guys. And now that I speak, silence was her best weapon against me, making me silent, shutting me up, shutting me down. But my language is my weapon, and it is going to hit home. It's because you're not crazy. You're finally seeing the system of control. So subscribe, Pulse Point Media, for more truth-telling, trauma healing, and survivor empowerment. Drop a comment if you've been chosen by God truly and have gone through this, but starved by your family members on every level. Your story matters. Your voice is the signal that they can't jam. And we have to share, because God is calling us to reveal these truths and to share these truths. So we are truly chosen by God, starved by family, and there is a spiritual cost of being the one chosen by God. And we all know this by now. We all have experienced the deprivation to our basic and common resources as the narcissist gets control of the things in your life for a sacrifice. Just chosen by God, guys, and starved by our families. And so we can see all the times that we needed support and help and love. And yet the narcissist, this narcissist in our lives, just wanted a sacrifice. They just wanted to offer up everything we created, everything we did. We were spiritually marked, but emotionally malnourished. And we know what it's like to suffer going without our basic needs being met. So there are many ways that I could take this today, but I just wanted to kind of talk about the abusive neglect of a narcissistic mother and how this neglect is over anything and everything. They can't see you as an external object or an external thing. It's only this ability to see themselves and to merge with you as one as they harm themselves and hurt themselves and then drag you under that mess, making you have to restore, making you have to spend your time, energy, and money getting yourself out from under the mess. And when it's done, you will have no resources left. But God didn't choose you to be punished, like I said. He chose you for freedom. And He sets the captives free and is near to the brokenhearted. And that purpose, it starts now. It starts with you speaking up. So we're breaking all this silence. And we are coming today to break these tactics of control and abuse. Amen? So because healing, like I said before, starts with the truth. And the narcissist, they just want us suffering all the time for those bad reactions. They live for the bad reactions, as you guys know. And they look to only get those bad reactions and get you in a state of only reacting bad, because that is their self-esteem. So whether it's food, money, shelter, or just basic duties as a parent, and it gets passed on from generation to generation. This emotional neglect is really a gangstalking tactic. And there are so many illusions within our family that we're breaking. Namely, that they did their best as they systematically calculated on how to strip us of everything that allowed for our development, everything that allowed for our ability to stand on our own, to have our own life. And they used their wealth, their time, their energy and money to drive a total breakdown again and again and again. Us being spiritually gifted makes us a threat to our family systems of control and abuse. There is this huge price, this huge cost that many of us have had to pay to be free, to be autonomous, to be independent, and we've lost everything in the process. We've lost family, relationships, jobs. We've lost places to live, transportation, as the narcissist competes to win and hides the abuse, playing a double standard, really a double standard of abuse. We know that they give themselves permission as they weaponize all the withholding. There is just so much resource deprivation, even though the narcissist was given everything in their life. They call us ungrateful and say that we never appreciate anything that they do. Really, today is just an emotional invoice of survivors and what survivors are forced to go through and what the cost is that we have to pay to get free. And so we have Jesus Christ and his shed blood that allows us the victory. And it's not by works, it's not by striving or trying, but it's by seeing what took place in the body of the Lord Jesus Christ when he was on the cross and what it has to do with us as he's been raised from the dead and has given us this life-giving spirit. So there's this emotional autonomy that we need as a form of rebellion against all the control and abuse. And this reclaiming our voice disrupts their entire family system built on lies and denial and con artistry. Really, it's so true, guys, that we are breaking free every day that we suit up and show up. You want to know what this neglect really is about? It's about the emptiness of the narcissist. It's about them not having a true identity of their own. And so they blend the lines of responsibility and do damage in your name, pretending that it's you, and get off on it. And you are their entertainment. That's literally what they've made of their children. And for me, I was just my mom's entertainment as she would smirk and smile and give me the duper's delight smirk like she had gotten one over on me every time I had to let go of the things that she damaged. It just is this constant threat to their image, constantly. So we have the victory, and this victory is found in Christ as we surrender, as we submit ourselves to God's operation in our lives. So the narcissists in my life, they just wanted to have the attention. And when they couldn't get the attention, they put you and me in the middle, right? So they sacrifice all that gets in their way. Of course, we have become the object of envy, and we are in the way of them getting all the attention on them. They don't want the truth because the truth speaks against their shame and their dishonor and all the abuse that they've tried to hide from everybody else. You know, it's this double standard of abuse where they think that they can do whatever they want to you and get away with no consequence. But there are consequences for damaging and destroying and stalking and harming somebody's life. There are consequences for calling somebody mentally ill and crazy and delusional when you are abusing and damaging somebody's basic and common resources, forcing dependency. So it's not weakness to speak up. And don't be ashamed, guys, to get online and to get on YouTube talking about these things. And these are ways we can establish our boundaries. We know that this narcissistic game and dynamic has been played with our lives since we were young. And when we were young, we were thrown under the bus time and again in a competition game over the attention. The narcissist couldn't share. They couldn't share other relationships. They couldn't share the vital resources needed to be a parent, to be a relative that is doing their duty, that is managing their duty. And they neglect that. They deny that. They deprive you of everything that they've received and then have this double standard, even though the whole world was given to them. They don't want it to be given to you because they don't think that you deserve it, that you also deserve freedom, liberty, and autonomy to make your own choices. The narcissist just wants to make your choices for you guys. And that is what we are addressing. And we are addressing the narcissistic neglect that is really a tool of abuse and control. The withholding, the artificial scarcity, the ghosting and vanishing and running after they abuse and get a breakdown and get a collapse to start happening. And where are they? They're off enjoying their new source of fuel, starting over with someone else in the same dynamic, the same game. And they want you blind. They want you to conform to toxic. And we will never do that. And this has been the problem the whole time, is that we see the narcissist and see through all the tricks of manipulation that they are engaged in. And, really being a mother requires your presence and to be present. And that is not happening with the covert, malignant narcissists. All they want is the applause that you deserve, but that has been stolen from you by unjust means as they take credit for all the good things in your life and all the hard work that you put in changing your life. They want the reward with no work. They want to steal from you the things that you created for your autonomy so they can tell a story, an untrue story, a story that bolsters their ego and their pride without having to take a hard look and do the work on themselves. It's not just neglect. Like I said, this is a narrative erasure. They don't just want to neglect you, they want you to not exist. They don't want to have to waste time and energy competing with you because you're a threat to their ego. So it's this dynamic that we discuss as they do everything they can to try to stop, block, prevent, get in the way, and become this obstacle between you and other people, between you and your resources. If this hits home, it's because you're not crazy. It's because you're accurate about what you've seen in your narcissistic family member. So we know that neglect can be used as a weapon. It can be used as a way to control and damage. It can be used to make you miss opportunities that you deserved. How often, guys, have many of us had to let go of opportunities that the Lord gave us that were created for us so that we could advance in our calling with God, and yet the narcissist is there stealing it away, taking what does not belong to them. This identity crisis that they have as they think you're them and they're you. And it's not just about copying you. It's not just about mirroring your likes and dislikes. That's just the studying phase as they learn to be you. And then once they think they've got you down, they hijack your identity, whether it's your words, your cadence, your beliefs, and everything that you've learned and have paid the heavy price to go through to learn. So we are not giving up things that God has given us, things that God has done for us in this abusive neglect game to punish us and to silence us from exposing the truth about who the real problem has been in our family. When I was young, my mom saw the attention that other family members were giving me, and she couldn't take it. All she could do was roll her eyes, shake her head, and huff and puff. And then throw me under the bus, playing the victim of me. And it's this victim act that they're not sorry for. Even if it causes total destruction, they will never admit to the fact that this victim performance is the best weapon that they have. And they have used it against us before we were even old enough to defend ourselves or to even know what it was that was happening as we were put in the middle of adult relationships. When my mom couldn't get me to think of my dad in the way that she wanted me to think of him, she wanted me to believe that my dad was abusing her and hurting her and damaging her when I was a very young boy. Preying off instincts. and those powerful emotions. And yet, when that didn't work and she couldn't get me to lash out at my father, when she couldn't put me in the middle, even though she tried to throw me under the bus many times prior to this, she worked on me and worked on me in a victim performance, in a victim act with my father as the culprit abuser. So the narcissist always needs this role game to be played. And you're cast in this role as the abuser so that they can play the victim again and again and again, which is their sickness. And you see, my mom couldn't get me to lash out at my dad, so she started working on my dad. And when we're alone, when she was watching me during the daytime all day when I was very young, she would go to my dad and play the victim and pretend like I had done something to her. This led to my father not questioning, but only being preyed upon in his immaturity emotionally. And what grown woman wouldn't be believed? Here's my own mother saying that I'm doing things to her that I'm not doing in a victim act, in a victim performance for the attention to win. And so she would tell my father that I did things to her that I didn't. And this would lead to conflict between me and my dad, who loved me. I remember one day he was throwing me up in the air and laughing. I was really young. And I look over and I see her on the couch rolling her eyes. This is very common for the narcissistic, covert, malignant female. Rolling your eyes instead of being supportive of those key relationships that I needed in my life that I'll never get back because he's dead. So I have to speak out. I have to start talking. And that's what this is all about. It is our healing journey that we are taking by talking about the damage that has been done that we've never spoken about, that we've never brought up to anybody, because the narcissist has alienated us in the same way, in the same game our whole lives, whether it was a job or a career or school, or whether it was some achievement. Whatever we accomplished and had that contradicted the fantasy that they're a victim of us was battled against and was offered up so that there was no benefit. There is this zero-sum win game that's played, and it really is no win, because the narcissist wants emotional explosions. They want to get you reacting. And so everything is 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, merry-go-round dance of control until you explode. And when you explode, then the victim act and performance comes out, and you're mentally ill. You're crazy, and I don't know why he's acting this way. So my mom would be jealous and envious and infantile in her desire for attention above everything else, even attention she didn't deserve. And so she would tell my dad that I was doing things to her that I wasn't when we were alone, when we were being babysat, and my dad was working hard all day to deal with me, to eliminate me, to get rid of me, to take me out of the loop, and to suffocate my life, to deprive me of a home, to deprive me of support for school when I was young, to deprive me of health and relationships and my own autonomy. So it is this neglect that is intentional, that's deliberate as a tactic of abuse and control, not doing your duty as a mother and seeing me as a threat to the attention. And so my dad and I would get in altercations, and my dad would beat the living daylights out of me. And there was this agreed upon plan prior to the trouble that started in my life. And I had no chance with such a manipulator, with such a victim performer that could turn on the tears at the drop of a hat, leading my dad to think that he was saving her, that he was rescuing her. And she played off of that, those emotions, those feelings, and that desire a man has to protect his wife. And here my dad was suckered by it so that we never had a connection or a relationship. And so this led to years of being physically abused. And my dad would rub his hands together and tell me over and over for weeks and weeks, you're going to jail, and would smirk the duper's delight smirk and laugh and think it's funny to ruin my life forever. You see, this is what my mom encouraged. This is what she got behind to support. Not freedom, not independence, not strengthening her child, but crushing and eliminating the competition, making sure she won at any cost, to the sacrifice of everything that mattered. And so my dad would beat me and beat me. And as my dad would beat me, beforehand, I would catch my mom whispering in his ear. She would go up to him and whisper in front of me and then smirk as my dad would get physical with me. And she would stand behind my dad and laugh and chuckle, because hurting me physically and beating me was entertainment to this person. She was entertained and got off on the power and the control out of this deathly gross insecurity that is just literally the most dangerous insecurity I've ever seen in another human being. Willing to say anything, willing to act and to perform, willing to play a victim performance. And it led to years of me suffering the same kind of abuse. So this narcissist in your life has done many vile and disgusting behaviors to you. And they have fed off your lack of being able to communicate, as they've isolated, as they alienate through slander, through lies, through smear campaigns, through doing the abuse and then transferring it onto you, telling everybody that you did it. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with someone that comes alive at other people's pain. Somebody that feeds a fantasy at your expense. And that fantasy is something that they never wanted to process. They never wanted to deal with. They never wanted to look at themselves and realize that they're living and coming alive is based off of offering you up. Based on you being the sacrifice. You have to pay the price for them in order for them to exist and feel good about themselves. And that's what my life became as a son. My dad never really questioned anything because my mom knew how to play one off against another. She knew how to put herself as the victim to evoke violence, to evoke rage, and to get all of us fighting with each other because we were a family of all boys. And she felt fearful. She felt overlooked and intimidated in a family of all boys. So she said, I know what I'll do. I'll just play the victim of my son and get conflict going one between another. And she would mock, she would laugh, she would roll her eyes, she would enjoy the pain that she was causing. So I just wanted to end with this, guys, this short word today. Narcissistic neglect and abuse in the family. And just what is done in sacrifice, which is everything and anything that matters and is good that you're standing on. And it's always going to be over your autonomy. It's always going to be over your independence and your ability to take care of yourself. And with that, I'm out.